asking a question. I was actually at an event, and she was asking actually Joseph McClendon a question, talking about depression and how she could help a friend that's going through depression. And and I said, really, I'm going to try to keep it clean to a certain extent, but I said, before you diagnose yourself with being depressed, make sure you're not just hanging out with a bunch of
Yep.
yeah, make sure you're just not hanging out with a bunch of asses, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes all we've got to do is we've just got to change the peer group. Start hanging out with positive people. You can't hang out, and I tell my kids this all the time. You can't hang out with the kids that get in trouble all the time and not expect to get into trouble. Just like in life, as adults, we can't hang out with negative people. We can't be negative all the time and expect to have a positive life. So if you want to have a good self, have a lot of self-worth and good values and everything else, hang out with people that have those similar values.
Right. And sometimes your kids are going to do that. I mean, my 20-year-old, we were having a conversation probably last year, and he was crying, and we were having a really intimate conversation about, you told me not to hang out with this person my freshman year, and I went behind your back and I hung out with him every, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. And this person who he was not allowed to hang out with ended up stealing from me and my husband. My husband and I were at an event, and my son was watching our house. He was 18, and he invited this young gentleman who was not allowed, and again, I believed him when he said he wasn't hanging out with them. We don't follow our kids around. And now my son says, I realized that the choices I made with him is why I got kicked off the soccer team. I get why you said don't hang out with him, because you're right. I indulged in the activities that he did as well because I was around him, and the whole peer group was doing it. So I did it too.
But sometimes, the only way to learn not to is you've got to fall. You've got to fail. We can't protect our kids from everything and from every bad situation and from hanging out with all the bad kids. They've got to learn on their own. And, all
Absolutely.
we can hope for is that we find out about it and we're able to help them and kind of coach them through and help them through it before it gets too bad, before it gets too severe.
Exactly. And that's what he was saying. He's like, I looked at him and I said, what are the gifts that you got from it? And he's like, what are you talking about? Who are you now because you went ahead and lived that experience? And that was a teachable moment, because I got him to understand that you have to celebrate your small wins to get your big ones.
Yes.
And so by dissecting all the little things of who he is now, because he disobeyed me, because he made, in my opinion, a bad choice, my son is an amazing guy. Like, he's an amazing kid. And it's because of these choices. And I said, so let's, each one of them, we're just going to celebrate, woo, yay, you did that and you are that now. And so then we went from tears to smiling, because he realized that when you focus on something as something bad and it ruined your life, that's how you see your future. But when I reframed it as the gifts he found from this opportunity, now it's almost like gave him a whole new bright future now.
Yeah.
And it also was an opportunity to teach him, don't forget to celebrate the small moments. Don't forget that, because I feel, Tony, I don't know about you, but I feel like if we're always focused on that one big goal and that's the only time we're going to celebrate, what if we never get to that goal? What if that goal changes? Like, do we never celebrate then? Do we forget? Do we quit? Do we fail? And then, to me, the only way you can fail is if you obviously quit. So, it's so important to capture those little moments where you could high five and just, woo, excited, and then move on.
Yeah, there's so many moments that we can think of. If you're waiting for the perfect this or the perfect that, or with the perfect day or the perfect weather or the whatever it is, if you're always waiting for perfection, you're going to miss out on life. So, and going to your point of celebrating the little wins, life is about moments. People think that life is about these huge moments and huge events. The reality of it is we can all go back now as adults and look back and say, how many great moments did I have in my life?
Right.
And you can probably tell me 10 or 12 or 15. But the reality, there have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those moments, thousands even. And life is not just a couple of big chunks. It's all the little moments that make a difference. So we've got to celebrate those little moments. We've got to celebrate those little things, those, that 100 that your kid got on the test, that small victory, because, life is about setting goals, right? And we were talking about this earlier as well. And you said this, and it's brilliant. So I'm going to go ahead and start that off, that we need to share our goals with our kids.
Absolutely.
Because our kids see us go through struggles as we're struggling to achieve our goals, and they see us fail. But they also see us get up again and try again and go and go and go. So it's super important to share our goals with our kids and celebrate the small victories along the way, because even some of those those mistakes or seemingly failures aren't failures at all. They're just a step forward. And I tell my kids all the time, it's okay to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Celebrate the 2 steps.
Right. And I have been doing that with my kids now, even how young they are, but even to set like little goals, like in the morning, I ask my kids on the way to school, what kind of day are you going to have? So back when they were like 2, Samuel was going to have a Ninja Turtle day. And I would say, so what does that look like to you? What does a Ninja Turtle day look like to you? And he said, well, I'm not going to hit, I'm not going to throw my shoes at the teacher, I'm not going to spit on anybody, and I'm going to have good listening ears. Now, he's like 2.5 or 3 at this time. So I'm like, that is a great Ninja Turtle day. Sage, what kind of day are you going to have? And she says, well, I'm going to have a beautiful princess day. And I said, well, what does that look like? She goes, oh, the same thing that Sam said. I said, okay, that's great. And then when we got in the car, when I picked him up, I checked in. Sam, how was your Ninja Turtle day? Well, and sometimes it was great and we talked about it. And sometimes he had to say, well, he really didn't have one because he spit on somebody or whatever, And so then we discussed it. But my point is how are you starting your day off with your kids? How are you starting your day off as an adult? I wake up every day with gratitude. Every minute, like when I wake up, if I open my eyes and I have not thanked God for another breath, and for me to open my eyes and ask myself, what kind of day, how can I make today better than yesterday? By the time I am brushing my teeth or getting in the shower, I know in my head I forgot the question. Like I am so trained, like something is missing, because there's those days like the alarm goes off, you get startled, you're like, oh gosh, let me get out, and you just get going. By the time, I promise you, my feet hit the floor, I go brush my teeth, I'm in the mirror and I'm like, oh gosh, I forgot to ask my question today. Like it is so ingrained in me. Just like with my kids, it's so ingrained in them that what kind of day you're going to have, what kind of day you're going to have. Lauren Slocum, she's a good friend of mine. Her and her daughter came up with these I am cards. Lauren has them for adults and Asher made them for kids. So I bought them for the kids and I bought mine for me. And my kids get so flippin' excited if they get all their stuff done in the morning and they have time for a card. Mom, did we get our card this morning? And I said, yeah. And there's like different pictures on the back. Sam always wants the elephant one. And I'm like, you got to pick something else, dude, because you're going to be the same thing. Because it says, I am confident. And I'm like, let's try to pick a different picture. Why don't we close our eyes and pick something different? But they're beautiful. I am faith. I am confident. I am love. I am a friend. And there's a great definition from a kid's point of view, right? And, and that's one of the things that I love about it. Being a coach for kids and teens, it's different from being a coach for an adult. I do coach adults, but when I'm coaching a teen or a kid, I'm in their model of the world. My brain goes back to what are they feeling at this moment in their life as an 8-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old. And that's what these cards are beautiful about. Like it's a kid version. And
that's amazing.
It starts the kid off. Like it's so imaginable. Sometimes we don't do a card and Sam will just be like, oh, I think today I'm going to be likable.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Listen, that's how we start our day.
Yeah, and it's funny that you're saying that. It's like we're on the same wavelength, right? I certainly have my routine. I've been doing my routine for 4 years, consistently. I always had some kind of routine, but not really a great one. But consistently for the last 4 years, I've had a routine. And one of my routines is that I am incantation, right? I am strength. I am courage. I am power. I'm faith. I am love, whatever it is. And now my oldest son gets on the bus earlier, so I walk him out, and now he walks up the street with me, and the bus actually picks him up further up the street because he's walking with me, and I have him do the I am. So it's great that we're on the same wavelength here. Fantastic. But I got to get those cards. I don't have those cards, so
they're
I got to
amazing.
get those cards.
And one thing that what you do, Tony, and I've always commended you and Lucy about this, is that you guys walk and talk. You walk your talk, and both you guys do. You guys are a great mentor for parenting. You guys really are. And, because I've spent time in your home, I see how you guys are. And one of the things that I see with parenting is that our kids see and hear everything. Like the last thing we say to them is their inner voice at night. How we treat our kids. Oh, you're so bad. Why can't you be good? Remember, that's their inner voice. If you want respect, show respect. I was at, when I was about 10 years ago, I've had so much training, but one of the trainings I went through was on behaviors, and this mom raised her hand, and there was a PhD lady talking, and she says, I just want my kids to stop saying, yeah. I call their name, Brad, and he's like, yeah. And so the doctor says, so let me ask you something. When Brad calls you and says, hey, Mom, what do you say? She goes, yeah. And she goes, well, change your response. He might change his response. Because this is what kids do. They pick it up. They hear things. They see things. When Sage was 4 years old, she says, why do you yell? And I said, that's a great question. Instead of saying, don't ask that question. Why are you asking me that? And getting defensive. Obviously, my 4-year-old's seeing that. Obviously, she's seen that I've yelled at Daddy, or I've yelled at her brother, whoever. And I said, you know what? That is a great question. So I honored her question. And then I asked her, I said, why do you think I yell? Well, and she put her little hand on her hip, her little sassiness. And she says, because Daddy never listens to you. But how true that was. Like, that's why we yell, right? Because we want to be heard.
Right.
We want to be heard. And so we raise our voice. And so I said, so what has to happen for Mommy not to yell? She goes, well, Daddy definitely needs to start listening to you. I guess Sam and I should too. Again.
Kids, gotta love it.
They're a product of their environment, what they see, what they hear, And that was a great living lesson for me. It gave me a self-check. Like, we all need that self-check. Check yourself before you start looking at what you don't like about the way your kids are behaving.
There's a great quote that you just reminded me of, and I think it's by Angela Schmidt or something. And it says, while we teach our children about life, it's our children that teach us what life is about, right? Because if we really think about it, life is really more important about the simple things. Like, if you look at children, I think I mentioned on a conversation before this, that kids, and you were talking about kids from age 18 months to 5 years, they say that children up until the age of 4 actually operate on a genius level, right? Yeah. They operate on the genius level because they don't know, they don't have a filter, they don't have these jaded belief systems. They don't have these lenses that they're looking at life through, and they believe that they can do anything.
Life isn't impossible to them.
Like, nothing's impossible. Mm-mm. But kind of going back and fast forward from that is, when kids are not going to do what we say, they as the saying goes for adults, God, I know I've said it, do as I say, not as I do. But the reality of it is, they do as we do. They don't
Correct.
do as we say, because we lead by example. So the example we're giving them is the example they're giving us back. So that whole thing, well, that's what you're going to get. If you're, have abusive conversations, that's what you're going to wind up getting back. Because we all do reap what we sow, and it doesn't become any more real than with our children.
Absolutely.
Because we're planting the seeds in our children. So who they become you know, as they grow through in life, has a lot to do with the seeds that we plant in them and how we're raising them. So
Right.
just remember, you know, don't raise your voice, raise your argument. Don't overreact, respond.
Well,
Or don't
that's
react,